Makes my heart break that we have to do this because of the reason, but by the same token, I love talking about them.
Silence in Hollywood is rarely accidental. It is rarely without cost. Often, it functions like currency, traded to preserve legacies, shield reputations, and maintain images worth billions. But the quiet surrounding Albert Brooks carried a different weight. This was not the calculated silence of legal teams managing narratives. It was deeper, heavier, the kind that settles in the chest, stubborn and unyielding, born from grief and long-held tension. The weight of it is inseparable from the history that precedes it. This was not an industry friendship built on premieres, favors, or shared publicity. Albert Brooks and Rob Reiner shared a bond spanning more than 60 years, forged long before accolades, cameras, or public recognition. Before All in the Family, before directing credits, before their names carried meaning in the wider world, they were simply two young men chasing laughter, trading jokes, dreaming without fully knowing what the future would demand. When Albert finally spoke about what had unfolded inside that Brentwood home, there was no polish, no filter, no prepared statement. His account was raw, frustration, regret, and sorrow interwoven. It unsettled those who listened, not because it sought to provoke, but because it carried the truth of presence, of witnessing. Many might glance at headlines, words like arrest or family crisis, and move on. But this cannot be summarized in a few lines. Albert is not only mourning a lifelong friend, he is recounting the gradual unraveling of a household, a sequence of moments quietly excused or ignored. He speaks aloud what is usually whispered behind closed doors. Public accounts have largely focused on Nick, framed through the lens of unconditional love, depicting Rob and Michelle as parents who gave everything to support a struggling child. Albert does not deny that love existed, but he offers a perspective shaped by proximity and memory, one that is heavier, more discomforting, and unsparing in its realism. He recounts what he saw as it unfolded, years spent in a living room observing tension grow while others remained silent, restrained by politeness, fear, or uncertainty about where the line lay. He describes the experience as witnessing a disaster inch closer, while no one spoke to stop it. He does not condemn Rob for loving his son. That is not his point. What Albert emphasizes is the peril of love unbounded by clarity, love that refuses to confront reality. In such moments, care can shift into enablement. And it is that fragile, dangerous boundary Albert returns to repeatedly. He did not speak to a national audience, nor seek attention through media platforms. He chose a quieter path, confiding in a small circle of colleagues who had known Rob before fame altered everything, those who understood the depth of the relationship and its history. Fragments of those conversations are now circulating, and they reveal a precision of observation that is both candid and unsettling. Albert recounts, in particular, a dinner some 8 months before the final collapse, a gathering intended to be calm, ordinary, a moment of respite. Yet the undercurrents were already shifting, subtle but unmistakable, the kind of tension that lingers long after plates are cleared and words left unspoken. The dinner was meant to be ordinary, just Rob, Michelle, Albert, and a few familiar friends. There was no expectation of conflict, no anticipation of drama. And yet, the moment Nick entered the room, the atmosphere shifted. Anyone familiar with long-term family strain recognizes it instantly. Conversations falter mid-sentence, eyes meet in silent acknowledgement, and an unspoken tension fills the space. Albert observed something different in Rob. There was no fear, no irritation, only a fragile, almost heartbreaking hope. A hope that perhaps this time might be different, that perhaps the moment could mark a turning point. Albert's voice faltered when he recounted it, and those listening felt the weight of that hope, beautiful, yet perilous when reality has a way of proving otherwise. Albert and Rob had been friends since high school, companions through decades of life, laughter, and shared ambition. He did not claim Nick was beyond help, nor did he suggest Rob had failed as a father. His point was more subtle, yet far heavier. Ignoring the storm does not make it vanish. And in this, the story expands beyond one family, beyond one house in Brentwood. It speaks to a culture in which image is often protected at the expense of intervention, a system that rewards silence while quietly discouraging candor. Albert spoke not with bitterness, but with the weariness of someone who wishes he had spoken sooner, who knows the cost of restraint. And once his account is heard, it lingers, unshakable. He described the moment that evening with precision. Rob rose as Nick entered, arms extended, ready to embrace his son, as if to signal everything was normal. But Nick was not there to reconcile or share a meal. He arrived with demands, significant ones, demands that could have been addressed long before, in ways that might have prevented escalation. The energy in the room shifted immediately. Plates went untouched, conversation stalled, and Michelle's expression told its own story. Fear. Not fleeting irritation or disappointment, but a fear that had taken residence over years, unspoken, quietly endured. Albert knew he could not remain silent. He drew Rob aside, away from the table, onto the patio, where their words would go unheard by others. There was no softening, no careful framing. He asked plainly, "How long are you going to let him hold you hostage?" Rob's response has haunted Albert ever since. He did not raise his voice, he did not argue. He simply looked weary, a man burdened beyond measure. And then he said words that Albert cannot forget, "If I stop, I lose him." In that belief, Rob had tied his presence, his attention, his resources, to the fragile balance of his son's life, convinced that to step back would mean irrevocable loss. What he did not see, what Albert observed clearly, was that shielding Nick from consequence carried its own risk, an invisible danger creeping closer with each act of protection. Albert's reflection is precise and deliberate. Love, even when profound, cannot substitute for accountability. Care without boundaries, he suggests, can enable harm. And it is in this quiet, unsettling reality that his concern rests, not in judgment, but in the weight of what was witnessed, remembered, and carried silently for too long. It was not something to ignore, nor something to dismiss, and yet, neither did it offer a free pass. In a world where every story is filtered through explanation, where trauma, pressure, addiction, and circumstance are offered as answers, Albert's account refused simplification. Yes, Nick had struggles. Substance use was not a secret. But Albert spoke with a clarity forged by experience. He had grown up around addiction, seen young people lost, struggling, and yet he had witnessed that line, this particular crossing, rarely taken. Albert resisted the notion that Nick's actions could be reduced solely to illness or circumstance. He saw something more complex, darker, personal. Beneath frustration, he discerned a deep, directed resentment, anger aimed at those who had raised him. And there was a dimension rarely captured in mainstream accounts: jealousy. To grow up under the shadow of Rob Reiner was to live constantly in comparison, measured against a legacy of films like The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Stand By Me. There was no room simply to exist, no space to breathe outside the weight of a name. Albert recounted a moment on a set years prior. Someone mentioned Rob casually, in passing. Nick snapped, furious, unrestrained. This was not playful rebellion. It was bitterness, the kind that festers when one feels invisible beside greatness. From Albert's perspective, Nick's aim extended beyond money. It was a quiet assault on the image, the legacy, the pedestal itself. This was no accident. In Albert's view, it was intentional, a targeted attempt to dismantle the symbol that had shaped Nick's life. Albert's concern now is not retrospective alone. He watches the legal process taking shape, anticipating how narratives may be framed. He sees the strategy: a young man overwhelmed by pressure, crushed by expectations, positioned as a victim of circumstance. And he fears how persuasive that framing may be. He warns anyone who will listen not to allow the story to be reshaped, because the next move is predictable. Shift the focus. Cast blame on Rob. Suggest the parents bore responsibility, implicitly or otherwise. Albert finds it cruelest of all that those who are gone cannot respond. They cannot explain, defend, or clarify. That is why he speaks. He is not seeking attention. He is stepping into a role left vacant, carrying the voice Rob no longer has. Because if he remains silent, the record will be written by those who were never present. Albert is witness both to the love that existed in that house and to the weight Rob bore quietly, absorbing what should have been addressed. And it is this latter truth that makes his account unsettling. It was never mere chaos or confusion. There were moments of real emotional injury, absorbed in silence. One memory Albert shared left the room still. It concerned Michelle Reiner, the stabilizing presence, the creative force, the artist whose work and care often smoothed tensions. Even saying her name was difficult. Weeks before the collapse, Michelle had reached out to him unexpectedly. She offered little explanation, spoke no names, but conveyed an urgent concern. She inquired about security, about safe rooms. Consider that for a moment. This was not a household exposed to random danger. This was Brentwood, a neighborhood behind gates, guards, and locked doors. Michelle's fear was of someone with access, someone who knew codes, someone who could enter unannounced. Albert advised immediate action, change the systems, reinforce safety, create distance between fear and the fragile reality inside. Albert urged immediate changes, new codes, professional security, distance between fear and the fragile reality inside the home. What lingers with him now is not knowing if those steps were ever taken. That uncertainty haunts him. He replays the call repeatedly, questioning whether he should have gone himself, wondering if he could have done more. The weight of that doubt sits with him, visible in the quiet moments when he speaks. The depth of his connection to Rob Reiner cannot be overstated. They were more than friends, they were almost mirror images of one another, aligned in instinct, humor, and timing. They built careers side by side, shared ambitions, and shaped each other's lives. Losing Rob was not simply losing a friend, it was losing a part of himself. Rob had extended that same generosity to others. He had given Albert a leg up in his early filmmaking, and connected him to collaborators like Jerry O'Connell and Kevin Pollak. Those who worked with Rob recall a consistent kindness and professionalism. Jerry O'Connell, who first met Rob as a child, described him as a guiding presence, one without whom he may not have completed his work. Kevin Pollak, a longtime figure in comedy and film, remembered a collaborator defined by competence and generosity. Rob Reiner's influence extended beyond family. He was a step-up, a mentor, someone whose presence shaped the industry. Albert's grief, however, has transformed into a sharper, more deliberate anger. He is confronting the structures that often protect powerful families. Normally, when a child of prominence spirals, the machinery moves quietly, statements are crafted, privacy is requested, interventions happen discreetly. Albert argues that silence, in this case, allowed events to escalate unchecked. Had action been taken years earlier, he believes outcomes might have been different. He recounts a moment in which Nick allegedly threw a chair through a window, a clear sign of danger. Yet no formal authorities were called. Intervention came, if at all, through private channels, doctors, handlers, people whose job it was to make the incident disappear. In Albert's assessment, privilege did not shield the family, it trapped them. Without clear boundaries, there was no real stopping point. Protection became a cushion, a check, a cleanup, until it was no longer possible. Albert describes the system as having failed precisely because it bent instead of standing firm, and he emphasizes the cost of that flexibility. It is a harsh observation, and he does not soften it. Those who have seen him speak recently note the change. He appears older, heavier, the sharpness of his wit tempered by shock. He recalls learning of the final events not from the family itself, but through a mutual contact, via emergency radio traffic, a moment that underscored how distant, even inaccessible, the reality had become. Let that moment settle. Albert learned of his closest friend's death not through a call from family, not through someone he trusted, but through radio chatter, distant and impersonal. He drove immediately to Brentwood, arriving to lights, barricades, and an organized chaos he could not penetrate. He tried to move past the perimeter, insisting that he was family, that none of it mattered, but to the officers on duty, he was simply another older man shouting from behind the tape. The image remains vivid in his memory, standing behind a line of restriction while the people he loved were reduced to files, protocols, and forms. No history, no context, only procedure. With the trial scheduled for January, Albert has made his position clear. He intends to sit at the front row, directly behind the prosecution, to be seen, to witness, and to bear silent testimony. He carries in his memory every promise made, every excuse offered, every intervention attempted. In a sense, he is a living record of the years that went unreported, and that alone gives his voice weight. He does not rely on theory or conjecture. He relies on what he saw, what he heard, and what he lived. He has resolved that he will no longer remain quiet. Meanwhile, the Reiner siblings, Jake and Roy, have sought peace. They ask only for privacy. Albert understands, but in his eyes, silence has already exacted too great a cost. This time, he will not allow it to prevail. The siblings' path is one of remembrance and restraint. They honor their parents and preserve the memory of Nick, balancing grief with the need to protect. It is a delicate, nearly impossible line, yet they navigate it with care. Albert, however, walks a different path. He is not bound by blood. He is not compelled to forgive indiscriminately. He was Rob's friend, and as such, his aim is not comfort, it is accountability. Grief need not be silent, he insists. Forgiveness need not erase reality. While the siblings choose peace, Albert chooses truth. That choice has placed him in conflict with powerful figures. He is outspoken about the industry's response, the flood of posts, the long captions, the carefully worded expressions of sorrow. Many of those posting had not spoken to Rob in years. Some avoided him entirely when circumstances became uncomfortable. Others, aware of Nick's instability, whispered warnings privately yet continued to invite him into their circles, shielded by the weight of his name. Albert names no one publicly, yet the implications are understood by those who were present. He calls it performative grief, public emotion divorced from private responsibility. Albert does not seek sympathy. He seeks answers. He wants to know who supplied Nick that night, who transported him, and what protective structures were in place, or absent. He wants each layer of intervention, each silent enabler, each unseen hand, brought into the light. This is why the story matters. It is not celebrity gossip. It is a demonstration of how wealth, fame, fear, and unexamined power intersect, and how unchecked behavior can ripple outward with consequences far beyond a single household. Rob Reiner's films often told stories where love triumphs, where devotion and patience conquer obstacles, and where truth ultimately prevails. Albert, standing amidst the wreckage, offers a different perspective. Love, in this instance, was neither sufficient nor protective. Love did not halt the descent, it allowed it. It granted access, it provided latitude, it sustained the conditions that made tragedy possible. And it is this quiet, unsettling truth that Albert insists must be acknowledged. Love provided access. It kept doors open that perhaps should have remained closed. And in that reversal, there is a weight that cuts sharply against the ideals Rob's films portrayed, where love conquers, where devotion shields, where truth ultimately prevails. Albert recalled a moment during memorial planning that unsettled everyone in the room. He sat with Jake and Roy, sorting through photographs, Rob on set, Michelle laughing, family moments preserved in still frames. Among them, an older photo from roughly 15 years prior. The entire family together. Nick stood there, smiling, calm, untroubled. Albert's first instinct was one of rage. To him, it felt like a false image, a lie frozen in time. He wanted it gone. The siblings did not. To them, the photograph was not a symbol of harm. It was still their brother, a version of him that existed before events changed everything. That contrast, Albert observed, captured the tension at the heart of this story. The family striving to remember the good, the friend unable to separate the past from what it ultimately became. Neither perspective is wrong. They are simply carrying different burdens. The toll on Albert is visible. He is in his late 70s, and this kind of stress does not dissipate with time. Sleepless nights, endless replaying of moments, anger that refuses to settle. Grief reshapes the body, the mind. Rob was not merely a friend, he was a constant, present through every era of Albert's life. He was laughter made flesh, the one who could make Albert laugh until it physically hurt. That laughter is gone now. In its absence, the silence feels heavier. Albert has tried to revisit their shared work, to sit with the memories, but he cannot. The screen darkens, and all that remains is quiet. Every smile, every familiar scene, triggers a cascade of recollections he cannot escape. The quiet is louder than anything he has ever known. It is why he continues to speak, not for attention, not for vengeance, but because silence has already taken too much, and he refuses to let it take more. There is something else, Albert believes, that has been taken, something few are willing to acknowledge. He says Nick did not simply remove Rob from the world, he took the legacy as well. Even watching When Harry Met Sally now, Albert notes, the joy remains, but it is tinged. The laughter lands heavier than it once did. And yet, the most unsettling detail, Albert insists, lies not in money, not in fame, not in films, but in Nick's eyes. In those last encounters, Albert saw something missing. Not sorrow, not anger, not even intoxication, simply emptiness. He described it as a building left vacant, the lights on, the structure intact, but nothing inside. What makes it more poignant is that Rob saw it too. They observed the same thing, yet interpreted it differently. Albert saw danger, a moment to retreat, to create distance, to protect oneself. Rob saw pain, a need for comfort, something he believed could be met with love, patience, and presence. That difference in perception is where everything fractured. One man moved toward the fire, carrying hope like water. The other shouted to step back, and the man carrying hope was the one who was burned. As the January trial approaches, Albert has made one thing clear, he will no longer remain silent. He is no longer the background voice, the observer, the one who plays the funny part to ease the tension. He is stepping forward, deliberately, whether the world is ready or not. Albert understands how the system operates. He knows how narratives are shaped in court, how juries can be influenced by carefully crafted backstories, by childhood struggles, by the subtle softening of responsibility. He knows that skilled legal teams can blur lines just enough to make reality feel complicated. This is why he is speaking now. He is drawing a hard line. His message is simple, yet uncompromising. Rob and Michelle were not villains. They were not careless. They were parents who loved with everything they had. And in that love, they became vulnerable. That truth is uncomfortable. It defies the instinct to shield grieving families behind silence. But Albert insists silence has already failed. In his eyes, truth is the final act of respect. Not comforting words, not gentle edits, not pretending that the night was calm. Albert returns, again and again, to one image that will not leave him. Rob was afraid. He refuses to allow that reality to be erased, to be softened. There was fear, confusion, panic. And that fear matters. It matters in court. It matters in accountability. It matters because consequences must reflect reality, not an imagined version constructed for comfort. This is not vengeance. It is grief honed into purpose. A demand that pain not be diminished, that truth not be diluted. When news of the trial floods timelines, Albert wants the audience to pause, to look past legal language, past procedural delays, to picture him alone in his home, surrounded by 60 years of memories, old jokes, shared milestones, conversations that will never happen again, and understand why he refuses to be quiet. He waits for a call, not one filled with delays, not one wrapped in formalities, but the call that signifies accountability. And when that call comes, he knows it will not bring peace. It will not refill the empty rooms. It will not quiet the echoes left behind. Real life does not offer narrative closure. It does not resolve itself with a final act, a twist, or a swelling score. It simply fades, slowly. And Albert stands, refusing to look away. He reminds us that the signs were there. The warnings were real. The discomfort was avoided, because avoidance was easier. The question is not whether the story will end. It will. The question is whether anyone will truly learn from it, or whether the media will soften it again. Old speeches will be replayed. Smiling photographs will be shown. Healing and moving forward will be invoked. But Albert is here to insist that the wound remains open, raw, unresolved. And the hardest truth he keeps returning to, those closest to us are not always safe. Sometimes the only person who sees the danger is the friend standing on the edge, shouting into the noise, powerless to intervene.